The police siren pierced the quiet hum of a summer afternoon in Bakersfield, California. A patrol car pulled up to a curb where a makeshift lemonade stand stood, its cardboard sign fluttering in the breeze. Behind it, a small girl, no older than 8, stood clutching a plastic jug, her fingers trembling slightly. The officer stepped out, not unkindly, but firmly. "You got a permit to sell, sweetheart?" The girl looked up, eyes wide and brown like sweet tea. "And no, sir. But I'm just trying to help my mom get medicine for my brother." He sighed, pulling out his citation pad. A small crowd began to form. A few pedestrians slowed their steps. One woman pulled out her phone, recording. "You can't sell on public sidewalks without authorization. It's city code." The girl bit her lip, trying to be brave, as he scribbled on the ticket. The camera kept rolling. And then, "I'll take the whole stand," a voice called out. The crowd turned. A man in a gray suit, with silver hair and a leather briefcase, stepped through the gathering like parting waves. "I'll buy everything, lemonade, cups, and even the stand, for $10,000. The officer blinked. The girl gasped. And the world held its breath. The sun hadn't even risen when Amaya Johnson opened her eyes. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the wheezing breaths of her little brother Micah, who was curled into a ball on the couch. Their shared apartment, just 2 rooms in a rusted mobile home on the edge of Bakersfield, was still cloaked in the blue-gray shadow of dawn. But Amaya was already wide awake. Her mom lay motionless on the other couch, still in her diner uniform, one shoe on, the other kicked off somewhere near the front door. Her apron had grease stains that told the story of another double shift. Her arm was thrown protectively over her head, as if shielding herself from the weight of a world she hadn't asked for. Amaya tiptoed across the worn linoleum and crouched next to the couch where Micah lay. His breathing had been rough again last night. At one point around 2 a.m., he'd started gasping in his sleep. Her mom had leapt up, shaken him gently, and pushed the nearly empty inhaler into his hands. It worked, for a while. But the medication was running low, and the pharmacy wouldn't release another without payment. The copay alone was $150. And with the insurance gone, it might as well have been $1 million. Amaya wasn't supposed to know these things. But children who grow up in the margins learn to listen. They read tone better than textbooks and sense worry without words. That night, she'd overheard her mom whisper into the phone to her cousin, voice cracking. "If I can't buy that refill by Thursday, I don't know what I'm gonna do." So Amaya made a decision. It wasn't some grand, dramatic vow. There was no music in the background. She just stood up, pulled her hoodie over her pajama top, and padded quietly to the kitchen. She opened the fridge. Not much. A half-eaten container of spaghetti, 2 eggs, and near the bottom, lemons. 4 of them. Slightly soft, but still usable. She stood for a long moment, thinking. Lemons. Sugar. Cups. Water. It was enough. Her small hands grabbed a plastic pitcher from the bottom cabinet. She found the old fold-up table with the broken leg that leaned a little too far left. In the hallway closet, she unearthed a stack of plastic cups from a birthday party months ago and a roll of masking tape. In her school binder, she found a piece of cardboard and a black marker. On it, she wrote. Lemonade, 50 cents. Her handwriting was messy, but it would do. By the time the sun began to rise, Amaya had packed everything into her little red wagon, scuffed from years of dragging toys, and pulled it down the block. She chose the corner of Pine and Monroe. It wasn't too busy, but people passed through. Joggers, dog walkers, a taco truck that showed up around noon. It was clean, shaded after 10 a.m., and had a little bench nearby where she could rest if she needed to. She set up the table, straightened the cardboard sign, and filled her pitcher with water and sugar from a recycled jar she'd brought from home. Then she began squeezing lemons, her fingers working slowly, her arms aching after the second one. She had never made lemonade before. Not like this. But she wasn't trying to win a contest. She was trying to help her brother breathe. Her first customer didn't come until nearly an hour later. A man in a Dodgers cap walking a small white terrier passed by, slowed, then circled back. He studied the crooked table, the nervous little girl, and the sweat beginning to bead on her forehead. Then he asked, "This your stand?" Amaya nodded. "How much?" 50 cents, she said quietly, holding up a cup. He took $1 from his pocket, handed it to her, and waved away the change. "Keep it. Looks like you're working hard." Amaya smiled so hard it almost cracked her face in half. By lunchtime, she'd sold 10 cups. One woman gave her a 5 and didn't want anything in return. Another offered her a cold bottle of water. A lady in a nurse's scrubs told her the lemonade was a little sour, but brave. Each time someone dropped coins into the little tip jar, Amaya felt something loosen in her chest. Not because it was working, but because people saw her. And being seen, she was learning, felt almost as good as being helped. She stayed until the sun began to lower and her legs started to ache. In total, she'd made $13.75. She walked home slowly, gripping the wagon handle, her heart full and her mind buzzing. When she got home, her mom was still asleep. Micah was watching cartoons with the volume turned low. She quietly placed the small jar of earnings behind the cereal boxes in the kitchen, right next to a note she wrote on notebook paper. "Lemonade stand. Made some money. I'm okay. Love you." Then she crawled into bed and whispered to herself, "I'll go again tomorrow." And she did. Amaya returned to the corner of Pine and Monroe the next day, then the day after that, and then again. It became a routine, not just a summer project, but a mission. Each morning she'd wake up quietly, gather her supplies, refill the sugar jar with whatever was left, and pray the lemons weren't too bruised. She'd wipe down the fold-up table, straighten her sign, and head out pulling the little red wagon behind her like a soldier rolling into battle. By the 5th day, the people of the neighborhood began to notice. A pair of teenage boys who rode their bikes past each morning started waving and calling her Lemon Boss. A woman with a pit bull on a pink leash stopped for a second cup just to talk about how her own daughter had asthma, too. And then there was the man in the gray suit. He came on a Wednesday. Mid-morning. The street was quiet. Amaya had only sold 1 cup by then and was trying not to cry from boredom and sunburn. She saw him from the corner of her eye, tall, older, dressed neatly in a well-pressed suit and leather shoes too nice for this part of town. He walked slowly, with a large tan dog trotting beside him. Not a leash in sight. Just trust. He paused at the corner, observing without speaking. Amaya stood a little straighter. She wiped her hands on her shorts. "You want lemonade?" she asked. He walked forward and nodded once. His voice was gravelly but kind. "1 cup." She poured carefully, concentrating hard not to spill. "That'll be 50 cents. He handed her a $10 bill and refused the change. "Thank you, young lady." Then he walked to the bench nearby and sat down, sipping slowly as his dog laid at his feet. For the next 20 minutes, he watched. People came and went. She sold 2 more cups. Then he stood, nodded again, and left without a word. The next day, he returned. This time, he didn't speak at all, just gave her a 5, took a cup, and sat silently again. It became a rhythm. He'd walk by every other day, pay generously, sit quietly. Amaya didn't know his name. But she started calling him Mr. Judge in her head, mostly because he looked like the kind of man who worked in a courthouse or read really big books. After a week, she wasn't sure if she liked his quietness or found it strange. Still, she appreciated the way he never asked personal questions. Never asked why she was out there, why her hands were sticky with sugar, or why she looked so tired some mornings. He just drank his lemonade. And left. Back home, her mother finally noticed the missing sugar and lemons. One night, after work, she found Amaya crouched behind the couch, counting coins into a jar. "Baby, what are you doing?" Amaya froze. Then slowly lifted her head. "I made $62.75 so far," she said. "For Micah's medicine." Her mother sat down beside her, pulled her close, and cried without a sound. 2 days later, someone took a photo of Amaya and posted it on the local Facebook group, South Bakersfield Shoutouts. The caption read, "Saw this sweet little girl selling lemonade to help her sick brother. Respect. Let's support her." Within 48 hours, the post had over 300 likes. Strangers stopped by to hand her dollar bills and compliments. A high school student asked if he could bring her more lemons from his grandma's tree. A local taco vendor brought her a free burrito and said, "You're making the neighborhood proud." Amaya didn't know what to do with the attention. She wasn't used to people noticing her for good things. But not everyone was supportive. That Saturday, as the sun began to dip and she started packing up, a man in a straw hat and tucked-in polo shirt stopped at the corner. "You know you need a vending permit to be doing this, right?" he said sharply, adjusting his sunglasses. Amaya blinked. "I'm sorry. You're not allowed to sell things on public property. It's city law. You're taking up space on the sidewalk." She didn't know what to say. Her hands started trembling. He walked away, muttering, "Irresponsible parenting." She went home early that day. The next morning, she debated whether to go out at all. But Micah's medicine wasn't paid for yet. And Mr. Judge might come. So she packed up the wagon again, heart thumping harder this time. That Sunday morning, as Amaya set up her table again, she noticed something strange. The air felt different. Heavier. An unfamiliar car was parked down the block. A patrol vehicle. For a moment, she froze. Then she shook it off. Probably nothing. Just someone checking the neighborhood. But by early afternoon, the car returned. This time, it stopped. The officer stepped out and walked straight toward her. Amaya felt like her feet were glued to the sidewalk. He had a kind enough face. Young. Maybe mid-30s. But he was all business. "Hi there," he said, glancing at the table. "Is this your stand?" "Yes, sir." "You selling lemonade?" She nodded. "Do you have a permit to operate a business on city property?" Amaya opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She could feel people around her slowing their pace. One woman pulled out a phone. A teenager on a bike circled back. The officer sighed. "I'm going to have to write you a citation." "I don't want to, but the complaint was filed officially." And that's when it happened. "I'll take the whole stand." The words hit like a sudden gust of wind. The officer froze mid-sentence. Amaya blinked, her mind struggling to register what had just been said. From between two parked cars, the man in the gray suit stepped forward, calm, steady, his presence somehow louder than the siren still echoing faintly in the air. In one hand, he carried a worn leather briefcase. In the other, a checkbook. The tan dog padded quietly behind him. "I'll buy all of it," the man said again. "The lemonade, the pitcher, the cups. Even the table, if that's part of the business. I'll pay $10,000. The officer, Officer Hernandez, adjusted his posture. "Sir, I'm sorry, but..." "I'm not interfering with enforcement," the man cut in, his voice polite but firm. "I'm conducting a legal transaction between a customer and a vendor. I understand the law. I helped write parts of it." He extended a business card. Officer Hernandez hesitated before reading it aloud. "Honorable Harold M. Benson. United States District Court, retired." The crowd murmured. Someone whispered, "Is that the Harold Benson?" Harold turned to Amaya, kneeling so they were eye to eye. "Do you accept my offer, young lady?" Amaya's voice was barely a whisper. "Why, yes." "Good," he said softly, signing the check in a few practice strokes. "This is a purchase, fair and legal. No gifts, no charity. You're a businesswoman, and I'm a customer." He handed her the check and then looked at Officer Hernandez. "You may still need to file your report." "That's fine. But now you're not writing a citation against a vendor, you're interfering with a private property transaction. I trust you'll take that into account." The officer stood there for a beat, caught between protocol and discretion. Then he nodded. "Understood, sir." He turned and walked back to his patrol car without another word. Applause broke out from the crowd. Amaya clutched the check with both hands, staring at the bold number written across it. She had never seen that many zeros before. Harold rose to his feet. "I believe you should take the rest of the day off," he said, not unkindly. She nodded. "I will, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said. "Take that to your mother." That evening, the story spread like wildfire. A bystander had filmed the entire interaction. Within hours, the video had racked up over 1 million views across social media. It was on the front page of Reddit, trending on Twitter, and headlining Facebook feeds across the country with captions like, "Retired judge stops police citation, buys entire lemonade stand for $10,000. Bakersfield girl selling lemonade to help sick brother get surprise of her life. This man just redefined justice, watch how he protected a child entrepreneur." Local TV stations picked it up by nightfall. The next morning, national morning shows called. Meanwhile, in a quiet kitchen back home, Amaya stood nervously beside her mother, who had just read the check for the third time. "It's real?" her mom whispered. Amaya nodded. "He said it was a business deal. Not a donation." Tears welled up in her mother's eyes as she knelt down and pulled her daughter into her arms. "You did this, for Micah?" Amaya's voice cracked. "I just wanted to help." Her mom didn't speak. She didn't need to. The tightness of her hug said everything. By Tuesday, the story had gone fully national. A GoFundMe started by a stranger raised over $60,000 in 2 days. The pharmacy not only delivered Micah's medication, they canceled the entire bill. A local business offered Amaya a brand new lemonade cart, complete with health code certification and a starter permit. But perhaps the most surprising call came from City Hall. The mayor of Bakersfield invited Amaya, her mom, and Judge Benson to attend a special city council session to discuss reforms to sidewalk vending laws and equitable youth business opportunities. Harold politely declined the spotlight. But he had a request: let Amaya speak. "She's the one who's earned it," he said. 2 days later, Amaya stood in front of a wooden podium, surrounded by reporters, council members, and strangers who knew her name. Her voice trembled at first, but it didn't falter. "I wasn't trying to break the rules," she said. "I just wanted to help my brother breathe better. I didn't know about permits or city codes. I just knew we didn't have enough. So I tried to do something about it." The room was silent. "I think other kids like me might want to try too. Not because they want to get famous, but because, sometimes grown-ups forget we can help." When she finished, every person in the room stood up and clapped. Outside the chambers, Harold leaned against a pillar, smiling faintly as Amaya hugged her mom and high-fived her brother. The dog sat at his feet, tail wagging. A reporter approached him. "Judge Benson, why'd you do it?" He didn't pause. "Because justice isn't always about the courtroom. Sometimes, it's about what you do when no one's watching, until everyone is." The envelope looked different from the others. It wasn't pink like the utility warnings or white like the pharmacy bills. This one was off-white, stiff, and bore the unmistakable seal of the Internal Revenue Service. The word urgent was stamped across the top in red ink, and the return address simply read, Department of the Treasury. Amaya's mother, Jasmine, didn't open it at first. She stared at it on the kitchen table while her coffee went cold. Micah was drawing spaceships on a cereal box nearby, and Amaya was humming as she cleaned out her lemonade pitcher with soap and a sponge. For a brief moment, the trailer was filled with the illusion of peace. But the envelope sat like a warning bell no one had rung yet. That night, after the kids had gone to sleep, Jasmine finally tore the envelope open. Inside was a letter, densely worded and laced with legal language. But the meaning was clear. We are contacting you regarding a recent income event that has triggered a review under the IRS Individual Gift and Income Verification Program. Her eyes skipped ahead. You are required to submit documentation regarding a financial transaction involving a personal check in the amount of $10,000. Failure to respond may result in a formal audit and additional penalties. She read it 3 times, then buried her face in her hands. The next day, she called the number listed on the letter. The woman on the phone was polite but robotic. Because the check was not labeled a charitable gift and was instead part of a public transaction, the agent explained, it is being flagged as taxable income. We need records, documentation, and a breakdown of how the funds have been used. But she's 8, Jasmine said. The woman paused. Unfortunately, the tax code does not have a minimum age requirement for income reporting. When Harold Benson heard about the letter, he didn't react with surprise. He simply sighed. I was afraid this might happen, he said, folding the letter after Jasmine handed it to him. Viral stories attract more than cameras. Amaya sat beside her mom, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Did I do something wrong? Harold looked at her gently. No, sweetheart. You did something brave. But sometimes, the systems that are supposed to protect people, get confused when a little girl outsmarts them. He turned to Jasmine. I'll take care of it. 3 days later, Harold Benson walked into the Bakersfield IRS field office. He wore his old judge's robe, not because he had to, but because symbolism mattered in places like this. He handed the letter to the clerk and requested a meeting with the supervisor. When the man, mid-40s, skeptical, entered the room, Harold greeted him calmly. I'd like to clarify a transaction flagged under your audit system. I know the case, the supervisor said, adjusting his glasses. The lemonade stand girl. It's all over the internet. Then you also know that the funds were exchanged as a purchase, not a gift. The supervisor shrugged. It doesn't matter if it was sold, donated, or rained from the sky. The IRS treats any income over $400 as reportable, child or not. That's the law. Then let's talk about precedent, Harold replied, opening a folder. I've brought 3 cases from the Ninth Circuit and 1 from the Federal Tax Court, all demonstrating flexibility in enforcement when transactions are made with no intent of commercial gain and in the presence of extenuating humanitarian context. The man blinked. I also brought my former clerk, who now works at the Treasury's Policy Division. He'll be joining this conversation shortly. It took 2 meetings, 5 phone calls, and 1 notarized affidavit, but by the following Monday, Amaya's family received a second letter, this one much shorter. Dear Ms. Johnson, we have reviewed the documentation and determined that no further action will be taken regarding the previously noted transaction. Thank you for your cooperation. No penalties. No audit. No taxes. Just silence. Despite the relief, something had shifted. The spotlight that had once felt warm was now blinding. Amaya's photo had been used in hundreds of articles. Some kind. Some critical. There were arguments online about child exploitation and weaponized poverty. One YouTube commentator even accused Jasmine of staging it for clout. Jasmine deleted every social media app on her phone. Amaya stopped checking her Lemonade email inbox after someone sent a message entitled Welfare Family Milks the System. Even kindness came with strings. A brand offered to put Amaya's face on lemonade bottles. A talk show invited her to appear with balloons and dancing mascots. Someone tried to sell t-shirts with her face on them. Harold stepped in again. No more interviews. No merchandise. No branding. She's a child, not a symbol. And then he did something else. He handed Amaya a thick folder labeled, "The Lemonade Trust." "This," he said one afternoon as they sat on the bench at her old corner, "is yours." Amaya flipped through the pages. She didn't understand most of it, but the first sentence stood out. "This document protects the rights, privacy, and future of Amaya Johnson." Harold explained, the trust would hold the money, limit access until she was older, and prevent any third party, including the city, the state, or even family, from using her story for profit. "You shouldn't have to carry the weight of adults' expectations," he said. "You just wanted to help your brother breathe. That was enough." She looked up at him, then at the dog lying beside his feet. "What's his name?" Harold smiled. "That's Justice." Even after the cameras left and the mail quieted, the echo of Amaya's story still lingered in Bakersfield. At the mayor's office, where framed photos of ribbon cuttings lined the walls, a man named Councilman Patrick Keener sat behind a polished mahogany desk, replaying the now-famous video for the 5th time that morning. The image of the retired judge handing a $10,000 check to a trembling little girl had stirred something in him, but not admiration. Opportunity. Keener had always seen politics as performance. Emotion moved people faster than reason, and nothing stirred votes like a good underdog story. And right now, Amaya Johnson was the most compelling narrative in town. Young. Poor. Honest. Black. The perfect emblem for progress he hadn't actually made, but could now borrow. He closed the video and pulled out a legal pad. At the top, he wrote, "Amaya Act, Youth Empowerment Permit Reform." Beneath it, he scribbled bullet points. Simplify vendor licensing for minors. Annual Youth Vendor of the Year Award. Public-private funding initiative. Ribbon cutting at City Hall, photo op with Amaya. He circled the last line twice. That afternoon, Jasmine received a call. "Hi, this is Councilman Keener's office. He'd love to invite Amaya to speak at an upcoming citywide youth leadership summit. There's also talk of naming a local community center after her story, tentatively titled the Amaya Initiative. Would you be open to a meeting?" Jasmine was still wary from the IRS ordeal, but something about the phrase community center softened her hesitation. Amaya had always wanted a place to do homework and play safely after school. "We'll think about it," she said. Harold Benson heard about it 2 hours later. He stood silently in Jasmine's kitchen, reading the email forwarded to him. His lips tightened. "These types of men," he said carefully, "know how to weaponize goodwill without ever lifting a finger to earn it." Jasmine sighed. "He says it'll help other kids like Amaya." Harold nodded. "And he'll make sure the cameras see him helping." "But what if it does help?" Jasmine asked. Harold didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked over at Amaya, who was teaching Micah how to count change using her old tip jar. They were giggling. "Sometimes," Harold said quietly, "the best way to protect a legacy is to walk away from a spotlight trying to burn it." The meeting with Councilman Keener was held in a sleek downtown office with glass walls and filtered water dispensers. Amaya wore a yellow dress, and Jasmine clutched a folder of questions she'd scribbled on loose notebook paper. Keener greeted them with a blinding smile and too firm handshake. "You're even more inspiring in person," he said to Amaya, crouching slightly. "I've read everything about your story." Amaya gave a polite smile, already uncomfortable. He led them to a conference room where a slideshow played on a monitor, renderings of a community space, a stage with her name in cursive, and, disturbingly, mock-ups of branded lemonade bottles labeled "Inspired by Amaya." Jasmine stiffened. We didn't agree to use her name for products, she said. Oh no, no, of course, Keener replied quickly. This is just exploratory, vision boarding, you know. Harold, who had joined uninvited, stepped forward. Let's be clear, he said. If you use her image, her name, or her story without written, limited, and revocable consent, you'll face a legal counteraction so swift it will end your re-election bid before it begins. Keener's smile didn't falter, but his eyes lost their sparkle. I see, he said slowly. Well, perhaps we shift to a simpler collaboration. A photo with the mayor. A plaque unveiling. No pressure. Later that night, back in the trailer, Jasmine lit a candle on the kitchen counter and stared at Harold across the table. You think I'm being naive, don't you? She said. Harold shook his head. I think you're being a mother. And mothers want to believe in better. Jasmine rubbed her temples. So what now? We say no to everything. Hide forever. No, Harold said. But you get to decide the narrative. Not the news. Not City Hall. Not the internet. He slid a paper across the table. It was a handwritten statement from Amaya. I just wanted to help my brother breathe. That's why I made lemonade. If anyone tells you I did it to be famous or to sell bottles with my name on them, they don't know me. Harold had helped her write it, her voice, his structure. They posted it on a simple website with no comments, no sponsorships, no branding. The message went viral in a different way. And suddenly, the headlines shifted. Lemonade Girl draws the line, no more politics. Judge Benson shields viral hero from exploitation. 8-year-old reminds America what integrity looks like. Councilman Keener didn't get his photo op. The Amaya Act passed, but without his name attached. It was rewritten by another council member who gave credit to Amaya but didn't try to own her. And the inspired by Amaya lemonade line dropped. Because authenticity doesn't sell when people can smell the marketing behind it. Weeks passed. Then months. Life slowly returned to normal. Amaya went back to school. Her lemonade stand sat folded in the closet, but she still made lemonade every Saturday for her family. Micah's breathing improved. Jasmine went back to working part-time. And Harold, well, Harold kept walking justice around the block and stopping by for a cup every Sunday afternoon. The envelope was thicker than usual, cream-colored with embossed lettering and the gold seal of the National Children's Foundation. It had been hand-delivered to Jasmine's mailbox in a protective sleeve. At the top, in elegant script, it read. Amaya Johnson, nominee, Child Courage Medal. Washington, D.C. National Ceremony, Capitol Hill reception to follow. The moment Jasmine read it, she covered her mouth. Then she sat down. Amaya, sitting at the kitchen table sketching another lemonade stand for Micah's imaginary planet shop, looked up. What's wrong? Nothing, Jasmine whispered. But everything's about to change, again. The invitation came with a full itinerary. First-class airfare. A luxury hotel suite 2 blocks from the Capitol. A banquet dinner with the First Lady. A televised award ceremony hosted by a famous news anchor. And finally, a keynote address, delivered by the winner of the Child Courage Medal. That part hit Amaya hardest. Wait. I have to give a speech. Harold Benson, who had been quietly sipping tea in the corner, set down his mug. Yes. But you won't have to, unless you win. And even then, you decide what to say. Amaya looked uncertain. What if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing? You won't, Harold said. Because it'll come from the right place. By the time they landed in D.C., Amaya had gone through 3 speech drafts and 2 mini panic attacks. Their hotel room overlooked the city skyline, all marble and domes and flagpoles. Everything felt like it was meant for someone older. Someone louder. Someone who wanted this. At the welcome reception, reporters took photos from behind velvet ropes. A social media influencer tried to take a selfie with Amaya before Harold politely blocked the frame with his briefcase. "She's not a brand," he said calmly. "She's a child." That night, in their hotel room, Amaya sat curled up on the bed, staring at the blank index cards in her hand. "I don't want to go on a stage and say something that makes people clap," she said. I want them to know what really matters." Jasmine rubbed her back. "Then say that." Harold stepped in quietly. "You don't have to perform, Amaya. You only need to be honest. That's why they chose you in the first place." Amaya nodded. Then carefully began writing again. The next evening, the ballroom at the Capitol was a glittering sea of black suits, navy dresses, and polished shoes. Journalists whispered inside aisles. Politicians chatted over wine glasses. The walls were decorated with portraits of past honorees, young activists, student scientists, whistleblowers. And now, Amaya Johnson. The host, a well-known evening anchor with perfect posture and a voice like radio silk, took the stage. "Tonight," she announced, "we honor those who remind us that courage does not require power, only heart." Applause echoed through the hall. "And now," she said, "it is my honor to present the Child Courage Medal, to a girl who faced the weight of a broken system with nothing but a picture, a smile, and a reason." Amaya's name rang through the chamber. The spotlight swung toward her. Jasmine gasped. Harold reached for her shoulder and gave a single nod. Amaya stood. She walked slowly up the steps, trembling just slightly, as hundreds of faces turned to meet hers. She took the medal. Smiled. Then stepped to the podium. The ballroom went silent. Amaya looked down at her cards, then back up. "My name is Amaya Johnson," she began softly. "I'm 8 years old. I made lemonade to help my brother breathe." A pause. "I didn't do it to be famous. I didn't do it to teach anyone anything. I just saw a problem and tried to fix it the only way I could." She took a breath. "People gave me money. They gave me cameras. But what helped the most were the people who gave me time. People who listened. Who protected. Who didn't try to change who I was." Her eyes scanned the room. "There are a lot of big problems in this world. I don't know how to fix most of them. But I think, if more people listened instead of talking, and helped instead of selling, maybe we wouldn't need medals for doing what should already be normal." Silence again. Then thunderous applause. People stood. Journalists wiped tears. Even a senator in the front row mouthed, "Wow." Amaya walked off stage, not smiling for the cameras, but for herself. The next morning, Amaya's speech was on every major news outlet. 8-year-old lemonade girl gives a masterclass in integrity. Amaya Johnson shocks DC with truth, not optics. The girl who didn't want to be a brand became a voice. Social media buzzed not with memes, but with gratitude. Teachers printed her speech to share in classrooms. A university invited her to speak to future educators. One governor promised to revise vending regulations in her state. But Harold told no one what meant the most. Back in the hotel room, after the ceremony, Amaya gave him something quietly, the original handwritten speech draft with 3 words underlined in thick pencil. Help. Listen. Protect. He kept it in his briefcase from then on. The flight home was quiet. No press waiting. No ceremonies planned. And yet, Amaya didn't mind. She sat by the window, knees hugged to her chest, watching clouds drift below. "Do I have to keep doing speeches forever now?" she asked. Harold chuckled. "Only if you want to." Jasmine leaned across the aisle. "You could also, just go back to being a kid." Amaya thought for a long moment. "Maybe I'll do both," she said. "But only if Mike is okay." "He's okay," Jasmine assured her. Thanks to you. Epilogue lead-in. Back in Bakersfield, the stand sat untouched in a closet. Until one morning, Amaya pulled it out, not for the public, not for the press, but for the kids at the park across the street. No money. No signs. Just free lemonade. And that was enough.